Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen,
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
and continuing our line of discussion about, I guess, the business of enticing gamers into buying games. We wanted to talk a little bit about something that has been celebrated, vilified, has just been kind of a part of the business of purchasing video games for quite a long time, and that's pre-order bonuses.
Yeah, I'm sure they've been around for longer, but the time I really noticed them was in the 2000s is when I think they became super ubiquitous and everywhere. And I think even though they still exist now, there's been this shift to pre-order bonuses being more digital than physical. But I definitely remember in like the late 90s and early 2000s, everything came in giant boxes with metal tins and extra stuff, just to entice you to buy these games, where the standard price of a game would be $50. But then if you paid like $100, $80 to $100, you got like a manual and a tin case and a little collectible statue and Lord knows what else, a keychain and so on and so forth. And I always thought it was very interesting. Like, I'm not really super into pre-order bonuses anymore. It depends. Like, if there's digital stuff that's really worthwhile. Like, I think the last time I bought a digital sort of pre-order, but it wasn't. It was just so the new version of Destiny 2. If you bought the $100 version, you got the first two expansions included. So it was essentially an upfront cost for the season pass for a lot less money. Which is sort of a pre-order bonus because I think they only offered that deluxe version until the game came out. But so that would kind of be an example of something digitally included, or like a lot of the World of Warcraft expansions will give you a mount or a little pet or a special kind of weapon or skin or whatever.
Yeah, a very cosmetic bonus.
Right. Whereas, like, I think the biggest pre-order bonus I ever spent money on was the Arkham Asylum pre-order. Oh, no, it was probably the Arkham City pre-order because Arkham Asylum, I don't think, had this. I think the hype was for Arkham City. Came with a Batarang. And, like, there were a few pictures of it. You couldn't really get a good look at it, but, like, it came with a Batarang. You bought this $100 version of the game. It came in a giant box with a Batarang. Of course, upon receiving it, the Batarang was made of plastic and attached to a base that it can't be removed from, so it's mostly like a cheap plastic statue.
Which, cool, but it's not... You ordered a Batarang, damn it.
Right. I expected something I could fold up and like put in my pocket. Like, it wouldn't be sharp, but it would be like, something that like was, felt like a Batarang. But that was the one I remember like kind of turning me off to them because I was like, oh, so this wasn't as advertised. But there are plenty of other ones I got that I really enjoyed. Like there's a version of Chrono Trigger I bought that came with the soundtrack.
Right.
The gold cartridge of Ocarina of Time came with the strategy guide, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of an interesting concept of why pre-orders even exist. I mean, for the most part, pre-orders didn't start as a, packaging in thing. It was more of when retailers like GameStop would figure out how many copies of a game to order. If they took pre-orders, it's like getting a pull list at a comic book shop or anything like that. It's like, all right, I put a little bit down, so you're getting money. And it's also... all right, so 30 people pre-ordered this game, so let's order 40, and we'll have a little extra stock, or order exactly as much as many pre-orders as we have. So scarcity, demand, etc. And it became easier to incentivize buying these pre-orders if they started packaging in stuff. I think the last big pre-order thing I did wasn't even a pre-order. I don't remember which Zelda game it was. It might have been Twilight Princess. As like a pre-order thing for it. They were giving out Legend of Zelda t-shirts that I really wanted. And I kind of got all mixed up and somehow talked in circles with the employee and was able to buy a copy of Legend of Zelda Four Swords Adventures and just get the shirt anyway. So that kind of worked. And a lot of games still do kind of a big package thing, but they're not so much pre-orders anymore. I I definitely see a lot of Vita games, certainly like very anime-based games that are released in those big $80 boxes that have so much stuff in them.
Hmm.
Working Designs was it Working Designs, I think? Back in the day on the PS1 era, they would release big packaged games. Buying Lunar Silver Story or Lunar 2 Eternal Blue, it would come with all kinds of stuff in it.
Hmm.
And I do love when a game has a whole bunch of little extra feelies and things like that, but it's yeah, the incentivization of like, okay, if you pre-order, you get all this crazy stuff, or you get some cool cosmetic stuff. I like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it wraps into our conversations about physical versus digital also, because there was this weird swing where when pre-orders first started at GameStop, back at a time when I was working there, it was more of an incentive for GameStop to know how many copies to order, like you said.
Right.
And like they would
Absolutely.
partner with some of the game companies to include free digital widgets and sometimes physical widgets for just pre-ordering, not even for a special edition.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this weird shift where physical media was still really in demand. I'd say in the PS2, Xbox 360 to PS3 generation,
Yeah.
and Nintendo generations in there too, where there was a high demand for these games. People would wait at midnight to get them. And pre-orders were the only way to guarantee that you could get it at midnight or get a copy at all, because certain games would just sell out. Like it was impossible to stock enough.
Yeah.
And then it took this weird shift when we started focusing more on digital stuff, where people are less likely to pre-order them because the digital stock doesn't run out. So, like, for example, as of when we're recording this, last night I bought Kirby Star Allies, which just came out for the Switch. There's our Switch mention.
Yep.
And I played it a little bit this morning. I love it. It's a Kirby game. If you like Kirby, you'll love it. But I didn't pre-order it. I didn't pre-purchase it because I wasn't worried about it selling out, and I knew I was going to get it digitally because it's a multiplayer game, and I want to be able to travel with my multiplayer games without having to put the card in. But also, more importantly, it's, there's less pressure to get games when they come out. Also, for me, as I'm not someone who has time to play every game that comes out, and so it was interesting to watch pre-orders themselves go through that shift, and then the pre-order bonuses, of course, also went along that shift. I mean, back in the heyday of Halo, when it was, Halo 1, 2, and 3, and a lot of the Modern Warfare shooters, and when first-person shooters were at their peak rise, not to say that they're falling now, but like when they were one of the biggest genres in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot of in-game content that you could only get through pre-order. And a lot of people would complain, like, if you pre-ordered, you get these guns, these skins, these bonuses, whatever. But if you didn't, you could never get them. And that also started to shift, because eventually a lot of the game companies would, like, include a free update, 6 months later, giving that pre-order bonus out to those who didn't get it, because it was long enough that the pre-order, like, the value would diminish a little, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, but there were also, you're right, like a lot of the pre-order bonuses for GameStop were physical things too. Like they would give out t-shirts and keychains and stickers and who knows what else just for pre-ordering, because they wanted to get you in the door and guaranteeing you buying it.
No, absolutely. That is the case. It's all about getting you in the door, get you in the store.
Well, it was also about the game companies then knowing how much they could sell. We haven't really talked a lot about this yet, but there was suspicion of forced market manipulation by Nintendo for the last couple of consoles, because if there were less, people would want it more, and then they could release more, which we'll dive in deeper in another episode. But like that also plays into this pre-order thing. Like, I pre-ordered a Switch even after its release because I wanted to make sure when it came to the store, I got it, because they were so hard to find last March. Whereas now you could probably walk into a store and buy one.
Yeah, and even with physical copies, with stuff like Kickstarter, Indigo, limited run games, and a bunch of other companies that make it easier to. Just because you don't print your game physically doesn't mean people aren't going to buy it.
Right.
And it, like, having a physical copy is almost a luxury or privilege rather than an obligation or an assurance.
Mm-hmm.
So necessarily having those pre-order bonuses, I feel like it's also shifted a little bit, because not only do you get pre-order bonus versions, but you also have nowadays day one editions,
Yeah.
which again, it's one thing if you're going to put cosmetic things into your game. I don't need to buy whatever Final Fantasy game is going to also come with the Buster Sword in it if I buy the pre-order or the game or the day one edition or anything. Yeah, that's cool and all, but it's cosmetic.
Right.
It's but it's also very funny to then go to GameStop or wherever else it has used games and see like day one edition emblazoned on it. And it's like, but it doesn't have that in it.
Right.
And I think there was also a period of time where people were complaining that at GameStop there'd be pre-order versions of games that would have like the physical stuff in them, but they'd been opened up, the physical stuff taken out and then resealed.
Right.
I wish I could remember the details on that because I don't want to be flinging around wild accusations, but
Well, I know from working at a GameStop that we had a plastic sealer in the back, like you could reseal games, but we would sometimes do it for used games just so people weren't worried about things going missing or just disappearing and stuff like that.
right.
But yeah, no, I think it's also interesting to look at the pre-order bonus landscape now because a lot of the companies are doing it outside of the retailers because now that there's much more direct download and direct access, think about how when World of Warcraft first started, you were buying that from GameStop or Best Buy or
Yeah.
physical location, But
Yeah, you got that
now
little box.
90% of people buy stuff digitally through Blizzard's BattleNet app. And so now if there's a pre-order bonus, it's through Blizzard directly. It has nothing to do with GameStop. Like for their new expansion coming out the end of this year, you get a bunch of stuff if you pre-order it, and that's all directly from Blizzard. Like there's no retailer involvement there, which also I think was part of why GameStop and Best Buy and these other retailers, Amazon, are trying to did and still continue to try and do some semblance of pre-order bonus because they want to keep people shopping from them so they can keep, being relevant.
Yeah, it's very funny how again, it used to be a physical thing, but now because people aren't making those physical things or whatever else, and they're trying to broker deals, that they are all like digital rewards. And I find that kind of amusing because you are literally running around with your game receipt, in a sense.
Right.
You play the game. If you got the Best Buy version, you got this skin. If you bought the GameStop version, you bought this skin. So you are literally saying you're wearing a T-shirt that says "I bought this at Best Buy."
Pretty much. I mean, as someone who grew up wearing band shirts all the time, especially from concerts, you're essentially, my friends used to call me the walking billboard because essentially every day I was advertising some other thing that I liked. And that was definitely no different. I think it's also interesting that a lot of these retail companies become like for me specifically, I just mentioned I bought Kirby yesterday through Nintendo, through their online store, no retailer involved. And as there's more connectivity, those spaces become less relevant. Like the first time in years I had been in a GameStop was to make sure I could get a Switch because you couldn't get it online. And GameStop was guaranteeing if you pre-ordered after X amount of days, when one came in, it would be yours.
Yeah.
But like that was the first time I'd bought anything in a retail space, a physical space, in a very long time. I think the last time before that is when me and my wife Sarah got our PS4. We got it as a wedding present. That the money was gifted to us through Zola, which is a wedding website. And then we just went into a GameStop during our weekend off after our wedding and bought one and brought it home.
Nice.
And and that was almost 3 years ago. So it just shows, I think, why these bonuses and pre-orders and special editions were so prominent for so long and still are to a degree, is they want to get you to buy from them. I mean, this plays into our talk last week about you know, game clubs and you know, like PS Plus and
The membership
Xbox Live, the
programs, yeah.
membership programs, is because, you know, if you're paying for that membership program and you get stuff from it, you keep paying for it, you keep coming back. You know, this idea that Nintendo just finally released their, as we talked about, their coin system for the
Hmm.
Switch, so you can use the coins to get discounts on games. It's so you'll buy them through their store and not go into a physical space to buy it, because and that's why you get less reward for doing that, because if you're
Hmm.
buying it through them directly, it's all their money. There's no go between. There's no shipping. There's no printing. You know,
Yeah.
and I imagine the future of a lot of these game systems is going to be all digital. You know, Steam has been doing that for a very long time.
Yeah.
And that's why companies don't care that Steam slashes prices left and right and will sell a game that was $50 for $25 the next week as a flash deal, because with no printing and no publishing, you know, for like physical creating, they're still making profit hand over fist if they sell twice as many copies because it's on sale.
Yeah, it's. I mean, there are still costs to be incurred. There are still people to be paid, but there
Right.
is far less overhead in having digital distribution. And so I guess no, and it's interesting. I'm realizing again that we really didn't have pre-order bonuses in like a lot of the older system days. Yeah, it
Yeah.
really was the PS2, Xbox, GameCube era when pre-order bonuses really started becoming a thing, and it really was only like two generations of that before it really became something new. Because I think nowadays the season pass is kind of the what old pre-order bonuses were in a weird way.
Well, yeah, because ultimately all of this stuff is to get you to continue to play a game. It's why Activision feels like they have to shove multiplayer into every single game, is because they want you to keep playing their game. They don't care about you playing other games. Whereas gamers don't think that way. Most gamers anyway, want to play a variety of games to some degree.
Yes.
But yeah, the season pass is the same thing. And, you know, there's a lot of complaints, and we've talked about DLC before, and I'm sure we will again. But this idea that if you're developing DLC at the same time you're developing a game, are you really finishing your game, or are you leaving stuff out on purpose to release later? Like the big hubbub about the pre-order bonus and collector's edition of Mass Effect 3, that there was a
Mm-hmm.
character that you couldn't get, that you could, at the time at least, only get through the pre-order. And then eventually they released him as DLC that you could buy later. But like people were outraged that they were restricting a character that you couldn't get unless you bought this version of the game. And I think there's some danger with some of that stuff, is, you know, like my version of Zelda that I got for the Switch came with the season pass, so I've gotten all the DLC. It was just included for a little extra, which is
Nice.
fine. But I'm less inclined. Like I have Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, and they're releasing Donkey Kong DLC to make Donkey Kong a playable character, which is really cool.
That is cool.
But it costs. And like
Mm-hmm.
Splatoon is releasing a whole full length single player campaign, which is really cool, but it costs. And
Yeah.
also the idea that the DLC costs, when like, well, why wasn't a full single player campaign included in Splatoon to begin with? The answer is because it was meant to be just a multiplayer game. And I get
It
that.
really was.
And
Yeah.
I love Splatoon 2. I've been having a blast with it, but like I'm a little miffed that if I want to play it single player and not online, I have to spend $20. And I may
Mm-hmm.
still, because it does look cool, but I'm
Right.
a bit bummed, you know. Whereas like Mario Odyssey and ARMS and a few other games on the Switch have had free updates. And Splatoon, don't get me wrong, Splatoon 2 has had a ton of free updates, extra weapons, new gear, you know, new maps. So it's not like I'm being, you know, stingy in any degree, I
Yeah.
think. But like, and Nintendo's actually been really good about free updates, you know, even for
Yeah, they
games like
usually are.
Mario Odyssey and some other stuff. But it still makes me wonder, like, where's the line when you're pre-ordering something to get extra content, and then like the season pass thing, like where's the line between falling short of the original release and just working on extra stuff for post the regular release?
Yeah, and when you would pre-order a game and you got whatever gotchapon joy that came with it,
Mm-hmm.
um, it was okay. The thing I'm getting eventually is the full game, which I'm excited about. And to get me to pay a little early for it, I'm also getting the stuff with it. And cosmetic stuff, very cool. hiding a character or stuff like that behind it, that's a bit unbalancing and a bit upsetting to me. And the problem that I find with season passes is you're buying the game up front, almost with the promise of, and then stuff's gonna come out. You might want it, you might not want it. Like sometimes pre-ordering a game, like you get something with it, you go, oh, that's cool, fine. I just really wanted this game and wanted to make sure I got it.
Right.
The season pass is more of a, I want to have the entire game experience. I want nothing held off from me.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think sometimes if you add maybe an extra mode that's not crucial, like if getting Luigi's Balloon World in Mario Odyssey was going to cost something, I think that would have been very upsetting for a lot of gamers. It's a very cool thing, and it's become wildly popular. I don't have statistics, but I've certainly a lot of hearsay, a lot of internet stuff. Like, there's a lot of people who enjoy it, and so that's a great thing. But yeah, I feel like an entire campaign, or I mean, I'm a dyed in the wool Blizzard player. I love the Diablo games,
Right.
and like getting 2 new character classes in another act in Diablo 2, getting another character class in a whole nother act in Diablo 3, that is worth an expansion to me.
Right.
And if it were the sort of thing where it's like, all right, but again, Diablo's got an established brand, and if Diablo 3 had a like season passing at the beginning, I mean, granted, they run in seasons anyway. Stuff rises and falls and comes and goes, but not in the sense that like buying a game season passes. That's just their way of keeping the game fresh.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure you don't have to pay a subscription fee for that. I mean, I play Diablo on the console, so
There's no subscription fee for Diablo 3 on PC. It's just, you pay for the expansions as they come out. But yeah, well, I mean, the thing is about PC games specifically is I feel like they've done pre-order bonuses the best retail shop influence for the longest time. I mean, I remember pre-ordering City of Heroes because it got you into the open beta. Like 3 weeks before the game came out, and
an open beta is a whole nother pre-order kind of thing,
right? And like the fact that a lot of these PC games will give you access to open beta, or give you an access to test the game, or play it for certain hours every week until the game comes out, that's a really neat feature. It's giving you early access to a game that's not quite finished yet, but it's allowing them to test bugs with you as a guinea pig, and you get to experience this thing that you're really excited for. And I think that that's some of my favorite kind of pre-order bonus stuff. Whereas also, as far as season passes go, like the only season pass I've bought outright in a long time was the one for Arkham Knight. And that was because I love the Arkham series. I know that they do one-off campaigns with other characters that I want to play. Like they did a Batgirl campaign, they did a Catwoman campaign, and all of that stuff. And so I knew that season pass would be worth it. And for full story arcs and chunks of game, expansions and pre-order bonuses and season passes are worth it to me. It's when like Call of Duty has a season pass, and to me, an inexperienced Call of Duty player sees that and it's like, yeah, you'll just get maps as they come out and map packs and weapon packs. I'm like, but shouldn't those be in the free updates? I mean, I guess if your game is only multiplayer and you're releasing like huge chunks of game data in a season pass, that makes more sense. But like that always seemed odd to me. Now, again, I'm not a Call of Duty player, so maybe there was a lot more content there than I'm understanding. But from what it sounded like as an outsider, I wasn't really getting my money's worth, where something like Diablo, you're paying for these expansions that give you a character class and more story and all of that stuff. That definitely seems more worth the money.
Yeah, and I think with multiplayer games, it's almost a little more disingenuous to have paid DLC. I mean, granted, if you've got an MMO or something with a subscription fee, that's different. But if you've got a console multiplayer game, and the reason you can't play a map is because you haven't bought it yet, is in an already competitive, like get good scrub kind of environment, to then have another way that like there is privilege, or there's another way that somebody, it's I don't necessarily want to call it pay to win,
right?
But like paying extra for full access when you have to worry about how much you can access with people. And yes, there's all sorts of ways in game rooms to be able to, in the lobbies, to be like, all right, who can do this map, who can't do this map. But I find it a lot more frustrating in that than in a single player game. Um, I mean, like Final Fantasy 15, buying all of the single character episodes and everything like that. You can have your opinions on whether that's worth it, not worth it, should have been part of free updates, should have not been, whatever. But it's at least, if you don't buy them, it's not ruining your ability to fully enjoy the game in the same way. Because fully enjoying the game is also a personal thing, and whether or not that's you need to play every piece of content that comes out, period, or just play the game as you buy it and figure it out. Because, I don't know. I haven't bought any. I did not want to buy the Final Fantasy 15 season pass.
No, I didn't either. I mean, I barely played Final Fantasy 15. I need to go back to it, but yeah, I didn't buy that season pass either.
Yeah, and so the old pre-order bonus is sort of like fragmented into all of these like pre-buy, almost post-buy kind of thing, and it's just ways of the season passes, because that's what we're talking about. This I realized, no, that's where pre-orders went, but now it's pre-orders for we'll come out with some new stuff. Are you going to want the new stuff? Who knows?
Right. Well, I think also what's interesting is how some other games have dealt with pre-order bonuses. Like, I thought it was interesting in some certain fighting games, like Marvel vs. Capcom 3, I believe, had extra characters that you could get if you pre-ordered. And if you didn't pre-order, there was a free DLC you could get to at least let your game incorporate with those characters you didn't have. So, like, you could fight your friends who had them, you just couldn't play them, which at least allows you to be on the same level. Like, it's not allowing you to not interact with those people because you don't have the DLC. And also, even that's changed. Like, I believe Marvel vs. Capcom 3 had DLC packs that you paid for to get certain extra characters. Whereas now, look at ARMS on the Switch. They've given you a ton of free characters at no cost. Or think about Overwatch. Like, Overwatch releases a new character every 6 months?
Every couple months.
Yeah. And you don't pay anything extra for that. And that game cost. You had to pay for the full game. And so I think making that shift to allowing people to get certain things for free and then charging for others, like, as I said earlier, Splatoon 2, they've given you new stages, new weapons, new outfits, new things to earn, bonuses to the in-game modes that exist already without paying anything. And now they're releasing a full single-player campaign and some other stuff that you do pay for. That doesn't sound so bad to me when you look at it that way, because you've gotten a ton of free stuff too, and then they're working really hard on this extra thing that they're like, hey, here's the thing, we gave you all these free updates, why don't you pay for this one thing so we can continue to give you a ton of free updates, which seems to make more sense to me. It's the same way like in MMO, they add free updates with additional class features and story stuff and other things within that expansion, but when they're starting to work on stuff outside that expansion, on the next expansion, that's when you have to pay for it. And that has a subscription fee. So that makes sense. You should get a certain amount of free stuff with it because you're constantly paying them to make the game better.
Yeah, I feel like that's a more a more honest or more what have you revenue stream in its way. Because even like World of Warcraft, EverQuest, City of Heroes, any of the MMOs nowadays that I haven't been following them because I'm a befuddled old man. But yeah, no, there are plenty of updates that go on between expansions that are just literally part of the game.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to happen, whether it's class balancing or, hey, we made this new area, or like with World of Warcraft, it was absolutely hey, it's this holiday and all of this is going on, so join the festivities, which are ways of getting people to continue to play the game without having to hide it behind, any more of a paywall than was already there, per se. But you didn't have to be like, oh, cool, you want to earn those pets, you want to go join that festivity, you got to pay an admission fee. Real currency, not in-game. And with digital updates and expansions and additions, it was one thing when we're, games are coming out, games are being made, and there is a sort of generally socially agreed upon price point for console games, PC games, handheld games, large games, small games, whatever. There's a sort of internally held barometer of how much that should cost. But once you start adding in extra stuff, what does that actually cost? We don't have as strong of an internal compass of what that should be. If you were going to pay an extra $10 to pre-order a game and it came with a keychain, is the keychain really worth $10? Probably not, but knowing that you had the game and just the full thing, okay. But even then, we have a thrown off idea of perceived value. Is getting Halo 2 in the metal box really that much more worth it? Maybe.
I mean, to be
But
fair, it came inside a giant Master Chief helmet, so how can you say no to that?
you can put on the Master Chief helmet, right?
Well, so one of the biggest disappointments of my friend's gaming career back in the day was the Master Chief helmet was big enough that you could probably wear it. The problem was the way it was designed to sit on its pedestal. The inside of the helmet was filled to fit on this pedestal, so you would have to take it apart to actually wear it. So you couldn't.
So it's one or the other. All right.
But yeah, no, I think
Choices.
that also with pre-order bonuses, they've shifted. Like, I mean, and if someone listening is still going to GameStop and getting them, please tell me what they're offering these days, because I'm not quite sure, as I haven't been to one in a while. But I think that the perceived value is the most important part. I mean, people were up in arms about pre-order bonuses in the beginning. Like, I'm not going to pre-order a game. And then they started to not be able to get those games. And they're like, oh, I'm going to pre-order the game. And also, it was $10 towards the cost of the game, not an extra $10 in most cases.
In most cases, unless it was for a deluxe edition.
Right.
But you're absolutely right.
And then, but also on top of that now, like, and then even when season passes first started, people were like, I'm not paying a season pass to get more stuff in games. And now people pay season passes to get more stuff in games. Like, it's why we touched on this a little bit, the loot box thing, and how people are up in arms about EA's way of doing loot boxes, which admittedly was very wrong. But the reality is, like, with a game like Overwatch, you get a ton of loot boxes, but it's all cosmetic. You're not missing out on game features from loot boxes. It's all voice lines and costumes. And so, like, eventually that's going to become a consistent thing throughout, I think, a lot of gaming is loot boxes, but done in a way where you feel like you're not being walled off from games. Like, being able to pay to win is never good. But if people can pay to get extra loot boxes to get more skins, then, like, who the hell cares? They'll look prettier than we will. Who cares?
Well, if you want to look into that kind of controversy, look up Team Fortress 2 and hats.
Oh, man. And, like, people were so upset about these hats. I remember, and this was Team Fortress 2 is made by Valve. It's essentially the precursor to games like Overwatch, and it's a class-based shooter. It was like $10 to $20 for a long, long time.
And it was packaged with the orange box as well.
And then eventually, Valve decided, hey, we're just going to give this game away for free. Everyone loves it. People want to play it. We're not making a ton of money on the sales, so here it's free. But we have an incentive system we're adding with hats. Essentially, hats were the precursor to loot boxes, because I don't think there were a lot of loot boxes before that hat system.
Yeah, if it wasn't the first, it was definitely one of the more. It was a codifier of the entire idea.
Yeah, and like people lost their minds about these hats, and some of them weren't just cosmetic. Like a lot of the hats and weapons you could get in Team Fortress 2 helped you adjust and customize your character, make them a little stronger, a little faster, whatever. But
right, but the hats were purely cosmetic.
Right, there were other things you could get as well, but like. And people were just so angry that you had to earn these hats and they weren't just given to you, and they were completely cosmetic. It was so funny.
Yeah, and whether it was something you had to earn or something that was bought or something that was because you did this or have been playing this long, these are exclusive to you, and we only give these hats away during this time. And like it was the most pointless sort of like vitriol, like just, and I often think of that when there's a lot of hubbub about, I don't know, day one editions, cosmetic stuff, season pass things, where it's just like Is this just another bunch of hats?
Right. Well, yeah, and I think it's really funny that like something that Valve did now Blizzard does with everything. I mean, at least for Heroes of the Storm, Overwatch, and World of Warcraft, they have conjoining holidays. Like if they do a season-based thing, it's usually
Mm-hmm.
across all the games. And in
Right.
all those games, you can unlock certain stuff if you do during certain things during that time. And if you can't, it's locked behind the next time that holiday comes around because they're very much Christmas related or Chinese New Year or whatever else. And so they come back around. And I think it's hilarious that like now that's just like, oh, all right, whatever, commonplace. Whereas back in the Hat Day, people were so mad they couldn't get these cosmetic things because they just didn't do certain things that allowed them to have them.
I think there is a certain aspect of gamer culture, gamer identity
Yeah.
that if you can't get everything because if you can't get something because you're not good enough to achieve it, well, okay, I guess I just got to get better at the game.
Right.
But if, like when we talked about achievements, if there are achievements you can't get anymore because that you can't go online with that game anymore, or because something's been patched out, if you can't receive a cosmetic item because you didn't pay $10 2 months ago in order to get the game now, if you didn't log on at a certain time, that is frustrating to that idea of I can achieve anything in this game if I work hard enough. And so, and again, I can't get a different ending to Mass Effect 3 because I didn't buy the Citadel DLC. If anything like that, that is inherently frustrating. And without a guide to, well, how much is this extra piece worth? Especially if it's digital only, it's there again, we don't have any concrete handholds. We don't have a lot agreed upon. What is worth a $10 DLC to one company is just a free update to somebody else. And that also adds to that frustration. This sort of, I can't quite do what I want to be doing. And I think anybody can attest to those times where you think you got something in the bag, you think you know where you're going. Tripping is never more frustrating than when something's in the way of where you absolutely know where you're going, kind of thing. And so having this happen, that's already frustrating. And not knowing where to direct it or what to lean towards or what it is. I mean, as consumers, you're like, I want it all for free, naturally. But again, a lot of us understand that, yeah, there is a value to it that needs to be attested to. But we can't agree what that value is either. And whereas getting things beforehand, that was okay, just paying into the full game and getting some neat little stuff, and maybe later that's a collector's item. And getting it afterwards, well, now I don't even know where I'm going.
Well, yeah, I think some of my funniest moments with pre-order bonuses and collector's editions and just add-ons in general, which is what this conversation has boiled down to, is
Mm-hmm.
I loved when I worked at GameStop watching like, for example, this Halo helmet, I believe it was either Halo 2 or Halo 3 that came in the Master Chief's helmet. Like, when it first came out, it was $100. And then, like, 4 years later, it was $20. And I watched someone walk into the store, look at that. And at this point, the game is very old by that point, comparatively, and looks up and goes,
Right.
that's only $20? I said, yeah, you get this version of Halo and a helmet. He's like, I would pay $20 for a helmet. I'll take it. And like, didn't care about the game inside because the newer game had been out. He just wanted the helmet. And so it's funny how the values, or think about like perceived value of Madden games, because there's a date on the Madden as an example, but all sports games, the second the next one comes out, the perceived value and the actual value of the previous version plummets, even though it was probably still a very good game, and probably is, because the newest one is out, the older version becomes valueless.
Oh, yeah. Like, it is so easy to buy old sports games.
Yeah. I mean, but also think about like old pre-order bonuses too. Like if there's a way to buy them, which there isn't always, but if there is, they're not going to be as valuable a year or two after they came out as they were, unless the value is consistent. Like Blizzard is the best example and will always be the best example of, for the most part, what the right thing to do is with gaming. And the fact that
Often,
the
yeah.
value of their tchotchkes stay fairly consistent on their online store, either for real money or in-game money, the fact that it doesn't fluctuate that much, but they do sales from time to time, that
It speaks to the strength of their market
right.
and their choices.
And the knowledge of their own perceived value of their brand, that they don't have to undermine themselves
Yes.
because they know it'll sell at the price it's at.
And they are internally consistent to themselves.
Right.
Which is, because again, they have a couple of properties, which they've sort of developed into a few different directions. And yeah, like they kind of are very consistent in what needs to be a paid expansion, what is just an update, what is our cosmetic bonuses worth, what are in-game, out-of-game, what is this all worth? And they set that point. And while it may be an arbitrary point, it's at least a consistent one. So if you buy into what Blizzard does, you're buying into those prices. And it feels, maybe what they're doing isn't always the right thing or often the right thing, but it feels right because it feels consistent. And maybe that changes in the future, or, plenty of other companies do things a little differently. But yeah, that's sort of, even if it's an arbitrary choice, we appreciate that they've made that choice.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's funny how, for the most part, with my experience with pre-order bonuses, that pre-ordering now has been a convenience of accessibility and not necessarily getting something. Like going back to, and it's only because I mention it so much because it's the most experience I've had with an online library, because most other games systems I've been buying physical, but on the Switch, I've been mostly buying digital. They allow you to pre-purchase certain games that are coming out, the big releases. So you can pre-download it, and then on release day, it's unlocked and you have it and you play it, which that in itself is a bonus, because then you have to sit there waiting for the dang thing to download. It's ready to go at midnight of the release day so you can play it.
And that way Nintendo gets the money.
Yeah.
And you are going to have to wait for that game to be playable anyway, so now you've got it, and you'll know that you've got... And if you have to clear out space on your hard drive for it or your SD card, you have to do that so you don't run into that problem on day of it. It removes some headaches.
Right. And it's an interesting way of kind of kickstartering themselves a little bit. This fact that you're investing in something you want, that when it comes out. And that way they can take your money and put it towards whatever next thing they're working on, because you're already committed to that game and the business in general.
Yeah, and so I think pre-orders, the heyday of the like pre-order bonus has shifted a little. And what it originally started as in terms of like qualifying order numbers, and I feel like that still exists a little bit. I definitely know when I go to GameStop, it's like, would you like to pre-order anything? Like they brick and mortars need to do that. And so I feel like a lot of the anger people had for old pre-order stuff has shifted now towards season passes. I certainly shifted it.
Yeah.
So that's why we talked about it a bit today. And I think the two are very much related, because it is sort of, it's game speculation. Whether or not that is in that like in stocks, buying something to and not technically speculation, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Getting it because you think the value is going to be worth it.
Right.
So and on the one hand, getting excited about a game and paying into it before review scores happen, paying into it before you get to hear word of mouth of how it is. It's It is a little bit of a gamble, but if you're excited about it, or if it comes with something neat, well, then why not?
Right, exactly. You're investing in your future entertainment, as it were.
Yeah, and so it's and yeah, there was a big hubbub of things, and I checked the Master Chief helmet was Halo 3. You're right.
I thought so. Okay.
Yeah, and so a lot of that has died down, and I think some of that is because as digital libraries have supplanted some people's physical libraries, why do you need a physical thing if you're just going to get it digitally anyway?
Right, exactly. Now that said, again, as I said before, I haven't been into a GameStop to pre-order a game and find out what the pre-order bonus is in a long time. So if anyone listening has experience with that, please share on the internets with us, because I would love to know what GameStop's still doing. And I suppose I should go into one just to see if these things are still happening. We can maybe do an addendum to this. But
Yeah, and I mean, I go into GameStops plenty, but I'm buying the old games.
yeah, you're a retro shopper.
Yup.
I do want to take a quick moment to give a shout out to a Certain Point of View Media and the Certain Point of View podcast and Another Pass podcast and the Scruffy Nerf Herders podcast. And we've announced this on our Facebook page, and there'll be more information on it as we go forward. But they've accepted us into their wonderful family. We are now featured on acertainpov.com. Along with some fabulous graphics that Case had put together, who's the host of Another Pass podcast, which Geoff has been a guest on, and I will be a future guest on. But we're super excited to be a part of their family and share in the nerdery. And there's going to be a ton more collaboration coming in the nearish future. So keep an eye out for that. Please, as always, like and subscribe for us and leave a rating and review. But as well as for them, if you start listening to their podcast, please give them a shout and chat about their stuff as well. They love to engage with their audiences as well.
Very much so. Yeah, and let us know what your pre-order bonus highlights and low points and your feelings on what they were and season passes. And I'm sure we'll go more in depth on season passes at some point in the future, but I wanted to touch on it a bit because it was so related to the pre-order stuff. But we always love hearing everyone's experiences with these things. Keep the conversation going. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Once again, I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.